just trying to, bear through it. I just bought some Purell for about $800.
Yeah,
it was
good
a
deal.
travel size. It is.
Wow.
I mean, right now that is pretty good. And want to make sure that this video cast is well dated when someone watches it 10 years in the future, so they can look back and be like, oh wow, that was during the 2020 plague. So that's what I'm going for. How's your Friday?
Good.
That's great.
Didn't find any deals on Purell, but aside from that, everything is going well. And today we're going to be diving into looking at another aspect in the whole process. We're talking spin out on this show, so taking your service business and turn it into a brand new kind of business offering, something that's scalable.
Yeah. Can you do a spin for me?
I don't know if I have room. I don't want to. I
Okay,
don't want to go through one.
I just
windows.
like a spin out.
Yeah,
I want to do that, or like a jump and spin
Yeah.
out, if you could. Yeah, talking all about spin outs,
Stretch.
service companies that are trying to create a product, build some new scalable revenue. We know that service businesses can hit those thresholds because they've got to increase their revenue and a lot of times their expense and employees and resources at the same parallel rate, whereas software companies, there is the opportunity, it's not always there, but there is the opportunity to scale revenue at a much more significant rate than your expenses and the people and that. So this is an opportunity for a service business to find that idea.
Yeah.
And we've been talking through a number of episodes where we've talked about how to find an idea, how to vet it, how to understand the market opportunity, and all of these different things. And today we are talking about...
We're talking about comparing whether you should bootstrap or whether you should raise capital. It's a tough question.
So beg or borrow.
Yeah. How are we going to get there?
How are we going to get there? Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question. I always talk to different startup folks, and I think, depending on your mindset and what you understand of the world and whether you've been through it before, there are a lot of people that are always really excited to say, oh, I want to find, investors, an angel investor that's willing to just throw some money at me and see if this idea can go, and, I'm excited to get into my next round and raise money, and that's not always the best route, and I think there are some different reasons to go about it, which we're going to be talking about. But it is something really important that if you are even a service company, and we're dealing with this with a couple of our clients, is that even if you've already got your own revenue stream, it almost makes it harder for you to sometimes make that decision on whether you should bootstrap or raise capital, because you can, in a bootstrap mindset, use your own capital to do this, versus do you want to bring in others, get some additional dollars and scale it a lot faster. Yeah. It's really that question of, do you want to be, alone on a rowboat by yourself, or do you want to be with a bunch of people in a rocket ship?
Yeah, and so there's benefits and trade-offs to both directions, and I think, depending on where you're at, one might be more attractive to the other, but before you make the decision, I think it's really important for you to look at objectively both sides and what are the trade-offs and the benefits of going one direction versus the other, so that given where you're at with your business, with your concept or your product, wherever you're at, when is the right time perhaps to go after and chase that capital, or is this something that you can go take it as far as you can? So again, you don't want to be just kind of have influence based on where you're at right now, what your current circumstances are, and make a poor decision, not considering some of the trade-offs that you have both directions you go. But that's what we wanted to talk about.
And I think we're gonna have some information on it later, but one of the things I always say to clients and others is I feel like this is a very personal decision. You can look at it from a logical perspective of, what's the current value of what you have, what type of funds do you need to get to the next stage, what will that mean for the ownership that you give up, and how are those types of owners going to, or investors going to impact either the product or the ability to scale. You can make some of those logical, but there's also just that inherent of like, do you like to have other people in it, and is that what you want, and do you even want to scale it to that size? There's just a lot of different pieces to that play into it, for sure.
So I think first we're just looking at just some of the I think people jump to that kind of, we're going to go out there, raise some capital, and move to that next round. But there have been the big successes, and then there's a ton of these out there, right? But just some really recognizable logos up on the screen of companies that did it and really made something out of a product for any investment partners or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, there's some amazing success stories, and I know people that do it multiple times, and that's their mindset, is that they go and say, I'm going to use other people's money to make this happen. And even if they've sold 2 or 3 businesses and have cash themselves, it's just the mindset of like, this is how I do it and go about it.
Yeah.
But there's also plenty of businesses, and we were talking about one earlier, MailChimp, which is a fantastic one that didn't raise a dime and was able to scale to a really huge size, and plenty of others that we're seeing out. I think one that I heard about was Design Pickle. I was interviewing another SaaS founder the other day, and we were talking about Design Pickle is growing and scaling really fast, and it's one that they haven't taken a dime of investment. And so there's some different ways to go about it.
Yeah.
I tend to be on the kind of share my mindset is, I think that early on it's good to bootstrap until you've got some value built in the company. So you're already making some sort of MRR, monthly recurring revenue. You've got something that you can leverage, that when you're going out to investors, that you can actually say, okay, we've got some value here. I should retain ownership because I've brought in this far, but I want to take it to the next level, and now I need some, additional investment to do that. The other piece that I think is important about somebody getting to that stage, for me, is that it shows that they're able to do it. If you can bootstrap, that means you're able to figure out how to get the product out, how to market it, and that doesn't mean you don't have mentors and other people that are helping you and you do it alone. I'm just saying that, getting to a place where you've proven out the model and you're making revenue within your, founder team and board and advisors is a good method to really be able to prove that out. And then once you've done that, then you go and bring in investment capital.
So kind of what you're saying is you don't want to go too soon and try to get investors when you haven't really proven the model.
Right.
And, I think that's...
And it gives you so much leverage going into the investor discussions, is to say, look, instead of you going out there with nothing and you're begging, this is an opportunity to go out there and say, look, I've got something of value. Do you want the opportunity to invest in me? And those are 2 different conversations. And I always want to be able to go out to the market and say, here's the opportunity, investors. Are you interested in this opportunity? Rather than it being, more of, hey, I've got an idea and I'll take anybody. I want money. So to me, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So talk about the timeline.
I just think something to consider, along the way is what are you looking at? What is your timeline? Some people are building a product and they're thinking about exit. And they're thinking, you know what? This is something that, 5 years, I want to be able to sell this thing. Yeah. I want to be able to ride off into the sunset, right? Other people are saying, no, this is early on. This is how I want to grow my business. This is what I see my future for 30 years. Yes, I have this service business, and it'll be a core component, but I'm passionate about this side, and I would love to scale this out, and this is where I see all the growth happening, and I would love to be part of this and whatnot. So a lot of it is what is the projected outlook as far as time goes? What are you looking to happen over the next 5, 10, plus years? And what is your involvement in that? I think you have to answer some of those things, know where you're at, know what you're looking to do from a time standpoint before you decide which way you want to go, in addition to other things, but I do think this is an important one.
And there's no such thing as an overnight success, in my opinion. I mean, I think most people don't realize, they see the bright lights of what it's like to be a big company, but a lot of those people, it took a long time and a lot of work and a lot of capital to get there. And so, even if the beginning of the business you're thinking, I want to be out in 5 years, what's the true reality of that? And is that really the goal? And I think a lot of startups that haven't done it before, there has to be some reality that kicks in. of what this means, and will you pivot the idea, and what it really means for timeline to be successful and exit. I think there's a lot of good founders out there that exit isn't their first thought. It's creating value in something that's producing revenue that can grow, but the secondary thought is that ability to exit. Because to me, being able to exit is a lot more about, I'm building a company that someone wants to buy, so it's got value, and whether that value is being delivered to me every day in profit, or it's value that's being delivered to me in profit that I can eventually sell. Really, the idea for me of exiting is this idea of, are you creating something that somebody's willing to buy because it's got value to it? And at some point you can decide whether you want to keep raking that in at a slow pace, or you want to put your chips on the table, or cash your chips in so that you can pull some cash out.
That's a good analogy.
I mean, yeah, and that's just timeline to me, and thinking that end exit is not what it's about. To me, it's about, how do I create value, and whether that's something that I want to continue to rake in, or if I want to cash in. Those are different ways to look at it.
For sure. So I think on this next one, we're just comparing some of the main, kind of trade-offs and benefits that you have with the two approaches.
And I think this is a big piece of that personality. What personality do you have?
Yeah.
Like you've got here, bootstrapping, the first one to me, ownership and control. Are you someone that really wants to have that versus raising capital? What's it mean to be on the rocket ship and have other people that are involving themselves day to day? And do you like that? And even if you have investors that say they're gonna not be involved in the day-to-day, that doesn't exist in reality. It rarely exists.
And that's why we have influence on there, because even though ownership and control, if it's your product, you're in full control. Once you bring in partners, then you may still have influence, but you don't know exactly how much that's going to be, and it may not be to the extent that you thought. And so there is certainly that trade-off of, once you pull in partners, then you may not be calling all the shots.
Yeah, I hear
some people that's really important.
And I hear it all the time of people that get the silent or the backseat investors that, you imagine someone puts in money, whether it's $50,000 or it's $2 million, they put in cash, and if they don't feel like the ship's going in the right direction, they're going to go and grab the rudder, and they're going to start, moving it around, and that's just, it's how it works. And so if you think the reality is that you're going to have a silent investor, that may be the case if you're already in that position where you're making revenue and making money, and you really have a great process of making this happen. So I think that's hard.
Yeah. Second one kind of is a continuation of that to an extent. It's, when it is your own product, you have to hold yourself accountable, you and your team, whoever that is. There's not an external force that is saying, hey, we need you to meet this number this quarter. Not the same on the other side. You're answering to those investors, and could be something that motivates you and keeps you moving forward, because maybe you're not as self-motivated and you're not good at holding yourself accountable, or you may not like having to answer to somebody else, and you're doing just fine with this yourself. So there's trade-offs. For some people, they need that external force, that outside force that's now giving them kind of those deadlines and those numbers, those goals that have to be hit.
And we know with clients that we have that, when they have those funds and we're talking about initiatives, you got to go to that board and, say this is working or it's not, and they're going to, help force the decision of what's going to happen. So incremental growth versus big payout potential. I think that's that, are you a rowboat or are you on a rocket ship?
Yeah.
And again, I think it depends on lifestyle. There are some people that want to build a software business that produces, $200,000 a year in, personal income, and they don't care if it becomes a $50 million business. Those are those lifestyle businessers, and there's nothing wrong with that you can make really good money and live a really good life versus those that want to say, oh, I want to exit and get a $10 million payout and be able to retire at 40 instead of 65. And so it's just there are different approaches, but definitely bootstrapping, it doesn't always mean you're limited to exponential growth, but it is definitely a lot harder versus with cash. It's a little bit easier to make some bets and really push forward. Small team versus big team, flat. I mean, that just comes naturally with cash, that obviously you're investing in certain things.
More resources, and with being able to grow faster is being able to bring on team members, and just move a lot faster. Managed,
And
that's a
we
great
know,
point.
I mean, culture and people is one of the hardest things in every business. And we see that here, and we see that with our clients, and it's always a challenge. So you do have to think, if you're going to scale to that level, I mean, unless it's being done by robots or something like that, I mean, there are a lot of challenges to hiring and keeping and motivating people to do that.
And something to keep in mind is that you probably want to stay where you're effective, or not move too far outside, because some people that have maybe a smaller business, they may not work as well leading they're brought in to lead now a big team. If that's not what you've done you've had your service business for years in a small little shop, and now that changes everything. That may not be focusing on your core competencies, and it may not bode well.
I mean, you hear about the big stories like the founders that Zuckerberg that stays in, but I mean, there are a lot of companies that get investment and the founder is the first person to be marginalized, and they bring in somebody that's really a growth-minded person. That happens in PE firms all the time. They buy a company, and the first thing they do is put in a new management and grow that firm. And so that's something that you think of. And even in the conversation I had the other day is, what do you want your role to be within the company and as it grows? If you love developing products or you love marketing and sales, what do you want to be within the company as it continues to grow and change and scale? And does investment fit with that, or does it not? And that might be something to think of too, is what your role ends up being.
So a lot to consider, and again, a lot of it is personal.
And we already talked
about if you're in it for the long haul and you're okay with the incremental growth, then you're probably going to want to just keep bootstrapping. But if you are looking at making that big payday, getting out, then that might be for you. But I think it's a lot to think about. And I think there's it's like peeling back an onion. There's a lot of layers under each one of these, good and bad. Just a lot of things to consider that people typically don't when they're kind of thinking of the big success stories they've heard of, and they're thinking of Mark Zuckerbergs and people like that.
And I think when we're talking about service businesses, which is a lot of what this is about, is spinning a product out of an existing service business, it becomes more complex because you have another company. I've heard a lot of owners that are spinning out businesses that the investors say, well, I want you to stop doing the other business, or they want some of the money for the existing business. So but I've also seen service businesses see where they do spin it out into its own company, only get investment in there, and be able to keep both going forward. But it definitely becomes even a little bit more complex when you already have a business that potentially is revenue positive and all those things.
So definitely some things to consider and give some thought. I think the grass is always greener on the other side.
100%.
Sometimes
and there's no perfect answer. It's an individual answer.
For sure.
Again, there are successful companies that grind through it and grow businesses and make good money. So let's see. Next week we're talking about kind of operational thinking, some of the legal aspects of creating a product and spinning it out. To that point, do you create a new LLC and put that product into it, or do you keep it in your own? How do you leverage your internal team if you have a service business to do things, other stuff like that. So
a lot of things to consider, and we're trying to bring up those different perspectives that you want to give some thought. So that'll be a good one we'll talk about next week.
Definitely. Cool.
Hopefully our masks will be in.
I know. I bought those for $1,200, 2 masks. It was I thought it was a pretty good deal, but it's good. And go check out all these past episodes of our Spin Out show. or even go check out SaaS.coach, where we've got a whole nother show if you've already got a software product to help you figure out how to do retention and retain users. We're doing it on right now. And so check out all that stuff. Feel free to send us some questions. We'd love to answer them, and we will see everybody next Friday, right?
All right. Thank you guys for joining. Take care.
See ya.